All right, guys, we are back with another edition of the Willoughbys. We're like getting down to the wire. We're almost finished with this book. We are like jamming through it, which is awesome because I have a couple more books that I want to read. So we're going to get all sorts of books done. All right, what has been happening? Number one, the big thing was that the house sold, right? Kids are going to be on the streets. They don't know where to go, what's going to happen. But fortuitous as it might be, they happen to have run into Commander Melanoff. I want to call him Colonel. Commander Melanoff the other day. And they met the baby Ruth, and he and Nanny got along very well. And he mentioned that he needed a nanny. And so I'm just wondering, Lillian took my glasses, they're all dirty. I am just wondering, is there going to be a crossover? Like, are the Melanoffs and the Willoughbys going to start living together? Are they going to move in with them? Is that what's going to happen here? So that's going to be interesting to see. What else? What else has happened? The parents are still alive and kicking. They're about to go climb a mountain, and they decided that they didn't want a guide, that they were just going to do it on their own. So we'll see how that works out for them. I have a feeling because they have averted death this whole time that they'll probably be just fine, right? And hopefully the kids are going to find a place to live with a nanny, and that she will continue to take care of them. She seems to be very fond of them, so that's nice. All right, the terrible tourists, and I believe this is Mom and Dad. The small Swiss village. Who's in Switzerland? Do you guys remember? Yeah, Commander Melanoff's wife and son. The small Swiss village was so remote that travelers rarely passed through. Even the train that had been buried there 6 years before had been on its way to someplace else, to a different town with museums and shops that sold plastic models of Alpenhorns and St. Bernards. For that reason, because it was such an unusual happening, the villagers took notice of the two tourists who arrived wearing sunglasses and carrying badly folded maps. The townspeople murmured to each other about the odd clothing, Bermuda shorts on both man and woman, and Birkenstock sandals on their feet. Whatever are they doing here? They said to each other in low voices. They watched the couple enter the small Gasthaus on the main street. We need a big lunch, the man said to the waitress. He picked up the menu and glanced at it. I can't read this. It isn't in English. Tell me in a civilized language what you have to eat. We need nourishment. What a dolt. We're going to climb that Alp, the man announced loudly, pointing through the window towards the towering mountain. His wife looked at the guidebook and said, Listen to this, and read aloud to the pretty waitress, who was the daughter of the proprietor, which means the owner. Never been successfully climbed. With good binoculars one can see, in summer when the deepest snow has abated, the frozen bodies of several famous climbers. It is too dangerous for rescuers to retrieve these poor lost souls, and they remain there as a reminder to others and a tribute to the ferocious power of this mountain. She pushed her sunglasses to the top of her head and squinted through the window. I can't see the bodies, she whined. I want to see frozen bodies. Can I get a good thick steak? The man asked the waitress. She shook her head and gave a sigh, and he gave a sigh of exasperation. Ugh, these foreigners, he muttered irritably to his wife. Well, how about a Reuben sandwich? He asked. No, I'm sorry, she said politely. We have fondue. We're very proud of it. It's our national dish. Fondue? Good Lord! Do you know what I call that? Fondue-doo. That's what. Well, we'll all have hamburgers. We need something substantial, and some drinks with ice cubes in them, for heaven's sake. I don't know why, in a country with ice everywhere, one can't get a drink with ice cubes. Now, I want us to remember, right? They're in a foreign country. This isn't their home. This isn't their land. And so he's complaining about, number one, foreigners when they're the foreigners. And he's also complaining about their food and the way things are different than they are in America, but he's somewhere else. Now, that's kind of bad form, right? You don't go into somebody else's house and complain about what they have. It's terribly rude. The waitress took a deep breath. I'm sorry. No hamburgers. I could ask Father to make you a cheese sandwich. Grouchily, they agreed to cheese sandwiches, and grouchily they ate them when they arrived, when they grouchily paid the bill without leaving a tip. What are you staring at? The man asked the waitress as they turned to leave. She blushed and apologized. She had been staring actually at their heads, thinking for a moment that they may be royalty because they seemed to be wearing crowns of some sort, and because they had acted a bit like titled people from minor principalities. Now, however, she could see that on their heads they were wearing hiking equipment indeed, intended actually for the soles of hiking boots. It was quite startling. Oh, remember Barnaby A or B, somebody, one of those guys? He had thought, because they were like, they mentioned the things that they had, and then they were going to have one for their head and one for their feet. And Barnaby A or B, whoever it was like, it's backwards. It's not the way it's supposed to be. And so that's interesting. Okay, so then they did in fact have like something that's supposed to go on their feet on their head, and it's spiky so that on ice you stick to it. Later, when the two had gone, headed to the trail at the foot of the mountain, noisily dragging the pitons and that they had attached by string to their ankles, the waitress cleared the table and said in a worried voice to her father, "They're planning to climb the mountain, but they don't even have warm clothing, and for some reason they are wearing crampons on their head." He shrugged. "Should we send someone out to stop them?" "We Swiss never get involved," he said. "Anyway, no one is available. Everyone is going to the wedding. So are we." He went to the door of the Gasthaus and hung a sign that said, "Geschlossen bin auf Hochwitz," closed for a wedding. The wedding was a very exciting event for the village. Finally, after years of bachelorhood, so many that his mother had been wringing her hands in despair, the tall, thin postmaster, Hans Peter, had fallen wildly and wonderfully in love with somewhat mysterious and very meticulous foreign lady who had been rescued from the avalanche. She had already rearranged his postal boxes as well as his kitchen utensils. On this day they were being married in the village church at the foot of the forbidding mountain. The bride was wearing an edelweiss wreath in her hair, in her neatly curled hair. Her young son, in his lederhosen, was acting as a ring bearer. Not only the post office, but all the local shops were closed for the afternoon. All the villagers gathered, first for the ceremony and then for the lengthy celebration, which included yodeling, beer drinking, and many dances in which the dancers bumped their behinds together and clapped their hands. A happy day, to be sure. Yay! So the post op man, remember? And he married that foreigner. And who was the foreigner? That's right, Commander Melinoff's wife. But he stopped responding to emails. He doesn't even know if she's alive. Or not emails, to messages, to mail. She doesn't know he's alive. He doesn't know she's alive, and she thinks he just forgot about her. But really, like, he just gave up hope because it had been years and years and years that they were in that avalanche. But not so a happy day, to be sure, but not for the bride's son. For his mother's sake, he danced and yodeled and smiled. He was polite to the postmaster and called him Stepfather. You guys remember how he doesn't really speak German? He pretends he does. So he makes words that sound German up. So Stepfather is not really how you say stepfather in German. But beneath his pretense, the boy was deeply unhappy. Not just at the wedding, but in the little village. Nothing about Switzerland agreed with him. He was very clumsy on skis. The sound of cowbells hurt his ears. He was allergic to cheese, and cuckoo clocks made him very nervous. He had twice nicked his fingers with his Swiss Army knife. His lederhosen itched, and his knees were always cold. And though the memories were blurred after such a long time, and though his mother had said again and again, if he cared about us, he would have written, the boy did recall a kind and loving man with a thick mustache, a man he had called Papa, who had once read to him animal or adventure stories, usually in a quiet voice, while they sat together in a porch swing. He wanted desperately to go home. All right, that is the end of that chapter. We're going to move on to the next chapter, chapter 17, An Auspicious Change. It was surprising to the Willoughby children and to Nanny how difficult it was to plan their own futures, now that they were parentless and soon to be homeless as well. I think this would be easier if we were modern children, Tim said, but we are old-fashioned, so our choices are limited, Jane. Yes, Jane asked, and she was on the floor playing with the cat again. I think you must develop a lingering disease and waste away, eventually dying a slow and painless death. We will all gather around your deathbed, and then you can murmur your last words like Beth in Little Woman. Jane scowled. I don't want to, she said. Tim ignored that. Nanny? She was at the sink rinsing the plates on which she had served the souffle. She turned, wiped her hands on her apron, and looked at Tim curiously. Yes? You must renounce the world and enter a cloistered convent. We will visit once a year and talk to you through a grill. All but Jane, of course, because she'll be tragically dead, cut off in the flower of her youth. I told you, I'm Presbyterian. We don't enter convents. Tim thought. Missionary work, then. Perhaps to go to the darkest Africa and convert heathens. Nanny scowled and picked up a dish towel. What about us? The twins asked together. A and B, you must run away and join the circus. Toby Tyler did that. Remember we read that book? Yes, said Barnaby A. I liked it. It was very old-fashioned. Toby was an orphan, very worthy. And his pet monkey died, finished Barnaby B. But we don't like the circus, Barnaby A said, except for the occasional elephants. And we're allergic to hay, his brother pointed out. Old-fashioned children do not have allergies, Tim announced. If you don't like the running away to the circus idea, then you can build a raft and sail down the Mississippi like Huckleberry Finn. We can't swim, the twins wailed. That makes it even more of an old-fashioned adventure. Now, as for me... Yes, what about you? We're all dying off of obsolete diseases and sneezing with allergies and drowning in whirlpools and getting lost in the jungle looking for heathens, and you're probably planning something wonderful for yourself, Barnaby A said angrily. Not a bit. I'm going to have a typical old-fashioned boy future. First of all, I'm going to pull myself by my bootstraps and... What are bootstraps exactly? Asked Jane, looking up from the floor where she was tantalizing the cat with a piece of straw from the broom. Never mind, it's not important. I'm going to wear torn, patched clothing and sell newspapers on cold, windy street corners, saving every hard-won penny in hopes that someday a well-to-do businessman, maybe with a beautiful daughter, will recognize my worthiness, like Ragged Dick in that book by, what was his name? Horatio Alger. Remember him? And a well-to-do businessman, repeated Nanny. You mean a tycoon? Yes, exactly. A wealthy industrialist. A benefactor? Pollyanna had a benefactor, Jane recalled. Not till the end of the book, though. Yes, said Tim. This will be like that, and he will... I have an idea, Nanny said suddenly, untying her apron. Tim scowled. You're always interrupting, Nanny. And what do you mean you have an idea? I've had a whole list of them, he said. But we don't like your ideas, said Jane. She stood up. The cat, startled, scurried out of the kitchen, pretending that it had planned all along to leave. What's your idea, Nanny? Now, guys, we've talked before about how characters in books often change, right? Like there's a switch that happens. Sometimes it's very subtle, sometimes it's very big. Now, what Jane just did there, when she told him that we don't like your ideas, is huge. That's a big change for her because she's normally pretty meek, right? Like she just goes along with whatever. I mean, she's so meek that the parents don't even remember to like bring her up. And here she is standing up to him. So that's a big change. She's getting confidence. It's huge. But Nanny had left the kitchen as well. She had retrieved her official dark blue nanny cape from the closet in the hall, had flung it around herself, and was opening the front door. "I'll be back in an hour, children," she called. Where do you think she's going? There were some clues. Remember, I haven't read this book either, but there was definitely some clues, and I had a prediction, and my prediction goes along with those clues. Wondering if you're thinking of the same thing I'm thinking of. Be interesting to see what you think. And so, it happened that the entire Willoughby family, plus Nanny and the cat, moved into the mansion. When Nanny, reminded of him by the mention of benefactors and tycoons, had described their plight to Commander Melinoff and volunteered to take on the role of caregiver for baby Ruth, his eyes lit up with joy. A few days later, they pulled the wagon containing packed boxes of undies and the cat in its carrier to their new home, leaving everything else behind except what they were wearing, which included the beige sweater. It was Barnaby A's day for the sweater, because Commander Melinoff assured them that he would provide for all of their needs. They threw themselves on his mercy as old-fashioned people tend to do. "We have no money," Tim explained nervously. "The real estate lady said that the buyer paid tons of money for our house, but she isn't giving us any. She's mailing it to our parents, and they're off climbing an Alp," Jane added. "Oh, please," Commander Melinoff said, clutching his handkerchief and dabbing at his eyes. "Don't mention that word, if you don't mind." "Climbing?" asked Jane, her eyes wide. "No, the A word. It brings back sad memories. We'll change the subject, and we won't discuss money again. No need. I have oodles." "However did you get oodles of money?" asked Tim with interest. "I'd like to do that someday. I've thought about standing on cold, windy street corners selling—" "Oh, no, you must invent something, and you have to give it a wonderful name. I myself invented a kind of candy years ago, a long black spiral flavor with anise, and I named it Lickety Twist. It made me a billionaire." Okay, anise is a licorice flavor, so he invented something that was a long black spiral that tasted like licorice, and he called it a Lickety Twist. Do you guys know what that might be in real life? Made me think of like licorice or Twizzlers. "You invented Lickety Twist? We love Lickety Twist," the twins exclaimed. "Nanny won't let us have it, though," Jane pointed out. "No, we have to sneak it. She says it's bad for our teeth." Barnaby A opened his mouth wide. "I have a cavity," he said. "See?" "Oh, it's terrible for your teeth," Commander Melinoff agreed. "I never eat it myself. And then, when Ruth is old enough to chew well, I'll see that she has only apples and an occasional ginger cookie. Never will she have a Lickety Twist." "But what about all the poor children who do eat it and rot their teeth?" Jane asked sadly. The commander sighed. "Ah," he said, "that is how we billionaires exist, I am sad to say. Caveat emptor, we profit on the misfortune of others." "But you do good," Jane assured him sweetly, patting his hand. "You adopt babies." "And you take in needy children," said Barnaby A. "And hire homeless nannies," added Barnaby B. "I do like Nanny," the commander said, his face brightening. "She's a handsome, competent woman. She takes my mind off my sorrows. Where is she, by the way?" He looked around. "Tending Ruth and making dinner," Tin told him. "A minute ago she did the laundry and scrubbed the bathtubs." "What a wonder she is," murmured the commander. "She plans to wax the floor later." "An absolute wonder. Does she have a Well, what I mean is she a married woman? Oh no, she's an old-fashioned person, a spinster of little means, Tim explained. Well educated and of good reputation, but forced to go into domestic service because her father died in debt and left her penniless. Commander Melinoff sighed. A familiar story, like Jane Eyre. Well, he said, let us hope, like most old-fashioned stories, this one will have a happy ending. Oh my gosh, you guys, we are almost finished. There is, we're so close. There's a whole glossary at the back, which is great because it tells us what some of those words are that I keep going like, what? So 158, it ends, and we're on page 125. I think I will do one more reading of this, and then we will be all done. We are like right there. So we'll save that for next time, though. Okay, maybe I'll do one this weekend or next week, and then post it before we get started on our next adventure. All right, you guys. So the kids, they have moved in with Commander Melinoff, right? Commander Melinoff is finding himself a little intrigued by Miss Nanny, questioning whether or not she's married. Maybe he's looking for a wedding of his own. His wife, who he thinks has died, has moved on. She is marrying the postmaster in Switzerland. The son, however, right, that was a little bit of foreshadowing, perhaps, or maybe some predictions can be made. Maybe the son's going to come back to find the dad. He's feeling a little lost and wishing that he had him. He doesn't remember him well, but he just thinks about him and who he is. Parents continue to be awful people. They're about to go do the unthinkable and the unobtainable, which is to climb an Alp, to climb a mountain that nobody, not even like super experienced climbers, have been able to do, right? So they're going to do it. Somehow I predict that they will be fine. I can just imagine them being just fine by the end of it. It's just how they roll. All right, you guys. Thanks for watching today, and I will see you next week. Have a happy Thanksgiving if I don't see you before then. Bye.